Good afternoon. Today for the discussion board we're talking about Pastor Johnathan Edwards, who is a 250-year-old theologian who still has a great impact on today and throughout history. He really contributed so much. Edwards was a theologian of revival, and basically no one else matches his strong insights into the subject of a theologian. Everyone basically from Michael Brown to G.I. Packer cited that Edwards, when the subject of revival arose, Edwards' ministry was forged in the heat of this revival, and Edwards wrote hundreds of pages defending and analyzing it. He really was the theologian of revival, the theologian of experience, or as really a lot of people have put it, the theologian of the heart. He was so compassionate and so strong about it. There was a quote written by Martin Lloyd-Jones, who said, "You are doing well if you can read it and still think you are a Christian." So I think that's a very strong quote. Secondly, Edwards is important because eternity saturated his whole life. He constantly led his readers to heaven, hell, or the judgment seat of Christ. His perspective was eternal, and his insights was just incredibly amazing. For those who have read Edwards lose their fear of death, really, they're not afraid of it. So throughout history, he has helped people to not even be afraid of death. They exulted in the hope of sharing the glory of God, and they shuddered really at the horrors of damnation. That damnation, you're just it's frightening. But they go on to say how with Edwards' writing that it'll enhance your concept of eternity and the transform of ministry. And really, Edwards' relentless biblical logic corners his readers until they cry uncle, that they give up. Then they gladly embrace their sinfulness while increasingly exulting in God's goodness. And he was so important. He was so important in the history of faith and religion. Edwards knew and loved a huge God, and whatever you think about God, he will be bigger, bolder, and more satisfying after reading Edwards. So after people read Edwards, they saw it was something so much more bigger. Some people, can go on vacation to get refreshed, but other people go to read what Johnathan Edwards wrote. So basically, Edwards really understood the smallness and the fragile of man. He grasped the truth that man must become small in his own eyes to be happy or useful to God. And he really, back when he was alive and even till today, his relentless biblical logic really corners the readers, again, as I say. And discovering Johnathan Edwards for yourself when you read it, it's just truly amazing how much he contributed to our history of religion, and showing us that God is so much more of a bigger thing. And so he really contributed a lot to history. So he it wasn't just about being a pastor. It was about touching people's hearts and making them realize that God is He's much bigger than life itself. And so this concludes my discussion board post.